You're listening to LeaderCast, episode 199. Welcome to LeaderCast, Transforming Missions podcast with Tim Myers and Sarah Thomas, providing you with insights and resources you need to lead a movement of Jesus followers. Today we're having a conversation with Karen Cook, and once again, the theme for this month is all about understanding the history and context in leadership. So as a reminder, you can find show notes, including anything that we talk about, at transformingmission.org/podcast. To go directly to this podcast, simply go to transformingmission.org/199. Without any further wait, here's our conversation with Karen Cook.
Welcome, Karen, to LeaderCast.
Thank you for the invitation.
Would you help our leaders by just saying who you are and what you get paid to do?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I am Karen Cook. I am wife of Broderick and the proud mother of Broderick II, whom we lovingly call Ricky, Philip, and Aaron. We have our fur babies, include Rudy, a Beagle Terrier mix, Humphrey, a tiger cat, and 2 twin grand kittens. That's a long story for another time. I am what you might want to call a cradle Methodist, and I'm a product of a congregation that loved me and provided me with opportunities to explore my faith, and then to finally say yes to this incredible ministry opportunity. So what I get paid to do, jury's still out on that, but I am currently serving as one of the regional missional specialists for the West Ohio Conference. I had the incredible opportunity to serve alongside 3 outstanding, courageous leaders in this time we're in.
So you've already mentioned courageous leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Part of our conversations are around courageous leadership. So what does being a courageous leader mean to you?
It's a great question. So I'm often thinking about Nelson Mandela and what he reminds us, that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. I'm like, yippee, yeah, that's good. And so for me, Tim and Sarah, being a courageous leader is the ability to lead where you can't see. So my gifts are mingled with your gifts, and that mingling together creates a path that will inspire others to hopefully join in the journey.
That's a great answer. And part of the goodness of that answer, the greatness of that answer is that we've not had that answer before. That's good.
Leave it to me.
Well, no, we're all unique, and so I appreciate that. Sarah, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to echo the same thing. What a great way to frame courageous leadership and being a courageous leader.
Sarah's already introduced this month as understanding history and the context and leadership. So, Karen, as we continue our conversation, can you share a story of a church that you have been a part of or pastored that understood their history or embraced their context?
Yeah. It was hard for me to kind of zero in on one congregation, but I will attempt to give some thought around that. So one of the churches I had the privilege of serving was part of a 2-church merger. I wasn't the one that merged, and this was back in the late 90s. But what makes this different, in my opinion, is that these 2 churches merged because of a common missional identity. They were positioned about 2 miles apart, serving many of the same schools and the families in that community, and many were neighbors of each other, and they already had deep relationships. And so they both attended 2 Methodist churches that were 2 miles apart. But let me just pause here and say that one of the congregations was part of the former Evangelical United Brethren. and the other was a former Methodist. And so in 1968, we all know what happened. There was a merger and we became kissing cousins or family, so to speak. And we became the United Methodist Church. And so that's why we, in this particular community, we had 8 churches within 2-mile radiuses of each other because of that merger. So I digress back to the question that you asked. These congregations, well, I should say the pastors of the 2 congregations began asking questions. Wouldn't we be more effective witnesses in our community and living out our Wesleyan identity if we began serving together? So they began serving together. And then in, I think, 1998 or 99, they invited the congregations to vote and they became one worshiping community with a unique missional identity.
So you weren't the first pastor of that merged congregation. Were you the second?
I was the third.
The third.
Yeah. And I followed, the pastor I followed had been there 6 years. And so when I showed up, they were in the middle. Well, they had just voted to do a building project so they could really bring the 2 churches together in their sanctuary. And I remember telling the DS at that time, the only thing I built was a Lego house. So this was going to be an interesting journey. But it again, when your gifts are mingled with others and we're courageous leaders, there were courageous leaders who had the gift to take the church to the next level. And I had the opportunity to be their cheerleader. We can do this. Yay.
You saw the possibilities. Sorry, Tim.
All I'm thinking is you actually were a part of a church that came together from a larger tradition that they shared, but a smaller tradition was different.
Yes.
Did you continue to have to be sensitive to that and to work with people from the different traditions, the different churches?
Yeah, that was fun. Thanks for that reminder. Yeah, that was fun. While they had a missional identity, there were definitely, you could see, even in worship, you could see the great divide. And particularly around communion, which one tradition was used to quarterly, and they would always push me and say, you have it too often. You take the specialness out of it. And I remember saying, well, Jesus offers this gift to us. We should be able to take it at any time we want. And we're only doing it monthly. You give me an opportunity, I take it every chance it's offered to me. So you're right. I forgot about that. There were definitely distinct differences in worship, but we figured it out.
So I'm thinking of places that I've either come alongside churches or pastored the church that have had that similar history.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think contributed to their success?
You're going to think this is so elementary, but I think the fact that they were already neighbors, already in deep committed relationship, even though at one point they worshiped in, different denominational bodies. I think that, their being neighbors and being in relationship was easy. And the fact that they're serving the same population of schools, of community resources, the funny thing is you have 2 churches about 2 miles away from each other. And I'm making this up, but let's say we're going to do a backpack giveaway, right? And so what folks would do, they would go to the one church, get a backpack, and then make 2-mile track and go get another backpack. And so the conversation was, we could expand our resources and reach so many more people if we did this together.
What a wise congregation.
Yeah. It was an incredible opportunity because it was my second appointment. And it was an incredible opportunity because I'm so visually driven to be with folks who are just like, yeah, let's do this. And I remember having cottage meetings. People call them different coffee and conversation, just getting to know the new pastor. And one of the overarching thing I kept hearing over and over again is that we want our buildings used more than just on Sunday. I'm like, I'm your girl. I can do that. It got so bad that then they came to my office and said, there are too many people using our building. We can't have our meetings. I'm like, ding, ding, ding. That's the point. I
But
don't
what a
like
great
meetings.
problem to have.
We ran out of space. Yeah. So we had to go to a calendaring, which they hated because the UMW used to say, oh, well, we won't meet on Thursday. We'll meet on Tuesday next week. Well, Tuesday, their room was booked with mothers with young children. And then the Historical Society, I remember one Tuesday, in our fellowship hall, the Historical Society was in one corner. The UMW, United Methodist Women, did get their room back. And they were in their room. So then I think one of the other groups had to go in another corner of the fellowship hall. But yeah, I got caught on the carpet. We got it figured out. But it was a fun problem to have.
Place the challenge before Karen and she's going to rise to it. And then you're going to be asking for something different. They didn't know what they were asking for.
Well, they were driven by mission. And so we had Mental Health America, we had Legal Forum there, we had Literacy Council. So they were all there. They said that's what they wanted their church to use. So by golly, we used it.
I love it. I love it. Well, can we shift just a little bit in terms of, I'm sure that the churches that came together and merged were recognizing that they were moving into a different life cycle, part of their life cycle. And every church has that life cycle. And I have had conversations recently with folks that I don't think we talk about this enough in terms of every church having a life cycle. It's just like human beings. There is a time that we're born and we grow and we reach middle age, and then there's a time that we come to the end. And so I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit about what the relationship between ending well and leaving a legacy is.
Yeah. Can I make a confession first?
Sure.
I was probably one that just hated the term life cycle. And I remember sitting at annual conference just being devastated that another church is closing. And so it got to the point, it was like, this is so sad. But then I realized, to your point, Sarah, that everything has a life cycle, right? Our clothes have a life cycle. You either no, I probably shouldn't say it, but anyway, you can outgrow them. or,
No, they shrink in the dryer. That's what happens.
Okay, we can go with that. I like that one better. Or they're out of style, and so it has its life cycle, right? And so churches are the same, but I think it's how you see yourself in your missional identity that is the difference between ending well, because you can end well, but then what's the legacy that you want to leave? I had served churches where people know that church and they say, I will never set foot in there again. Is that the legacy you want to leave? And I'm the new pastor and going, knocking on doors and meeting people on the street like, yeah, I know that church. Yeah, I don't have nothing to do with it. That's not a legacy I want to leave. But, you want to hear people say, jobs, the industry moved out, but this church has remained a stable part of this community. They fed me when I was hungry. They brought me a cup of coffee when it was cold. That's a different kind of legacy. And that's what I think God will honor, even if you see that can no longer survive, the demands of maintaining a local congregation.
So Karen, related to that, if we really take seriously leaving a legacy, do we wait till we think that it's all over before we start trying to leave that legacy, or do we start earlier in our ministry in the church?
You know what? That's a great question, I'll tell you. And I've had this question with our Fresh Starts and New Beginning director. And I said, you need to start talking about legacy even with a new church. What is it you want to be known for? And leaving a legacy and life cycle, this isn't a new idea. It's not a new concept. I wish I could say it's all me, but it's not new. It's just that we don't want to talk about it. It's not part of our conversation and it's not weaved into our DNA, but it needs to be. We need to know, who do we want to be known for? And so I think at the very beginning, we talk about how do we want to hand the baton off. I mean, we're itinerant clergy in our system, right? And so the identity can't lie within the clergy person, because I believe that we're all strategically positioned in our unique communities and that God needs us. God needs us to be focused on ministry with and not ministry to.
So is there anything in that? I know that this is something that you've been exploring and studying and sharing with folks. If a church is trying to figure out what is our legacy, is there anything that you can offer to them to give them some guidance? And you might say, no, that would be an all day us having a conversation, and that's fine. I'm just wondering if you might provide any guidance for folks in terms of being able to identify what that is, because there's something in most congregations that they're known for. I'm thinking of a congregation in Cincinnati that I served, and when I would stop at gas stations, I just made a practice of saying, do you know where X church is? And the most common answer, and Tim will laugh at this, was, oh yeah, I went to a wedding there.
Yeah.
That was the most common answer. So every church has something.
Yeah, every church has something, and I think God has given every church something, but I think we get stuck, and our little limited view of what church is, right? And we don't take into account that every living organism that God has placed has a unique gift and a unique passion. But if it doesn't fit in what, we see as church or as ministry, then we toss it aside. I remember one of the churches I served, there were 2 high schools, 5 miles of each other, maybe even 3. I forgot about the Catholic high school. And one of the things I said, and it didn't fit, but it's just the way I'm wired. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool because we had this land. I mean, we had property, right? I said, wouldn't it be cool if we brought our lawn chairs and our blankets, packed a picnic lunch, and had each of the schools give us a concert or a preview to, because many of the concert bands, they start way before school starts, marching band and all. I said they could give us a preview of their music. And they're like, no, we've never done that before. That would be kind of weird. I'm like, okay.
And you were trying to build relationships with the schools.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, of course, after I left, guess what they did? Yeah.
Sometimes
so
what we do is
I told them about it too. I said, okay, y'all didn't like it when I said that, but you let the new guy come in. Okay, that's cool. But I was grateful. They had land, they had property, and music was one of their identifiers. The music was always really spot on, very well rehearsed. And I just thought it would be a part of, if we could expand, one of the things we're known for with the high schools, that kids are up and coming. We had so many educators in that congregation that it would have been an easy win. But knowing your identifier is unique and different. We have one church, their identifier are seniors, and they provide pantry for seniors. It's a wonderful gift. Everybody always said, we want young families. Well, if you don't have young families in your community, they're not coming to your church. Who's in your community? Well, people who are seniors, and that's your community. And that's your identity. That's your mission.
Awesome. Those are good reminders and a good word for folks to pause and think about what are the identifiers.
We'll go back to legacy again and ask Karen if you have any advice or wisdom for churches that people in the community say, I wouldn't set foot in that church. To what would the wisdom be to that church to turn it around for the legacy of saying, I found that the people in that church really loved me or cared for me?
Yeah.
What would you say would be that those churches might need to think about or do?
Yeah. And again, this is it's elementary, and it might be, low on the totem pole. I think you got to get out of the church. So if you already have that image of I won't set foot in that church, then you're going to have to take the church out, right? So if this one particular house, I remember that she said that she had young kids. So what would it look like to change that trajectory to be in the schools, right? Be in the rec centers, be what I would like to call one of the churches I serve third place. So you have your gathering community, do your Sunday thing, but then during the week, change the way you are viewed by being out in the community. The one particular church that I was referencing did start a community garden in one of the properties that they own. They tore down the dilapidated building that was there, and they developed a community garden with the elementary school that was cat a corner from them. So I think that will help change the image. But if they're not gonna set foot in that church, then you got to take your feet out into the street and change that image. It's going to take some time, but that's okay. Jesus got time. So,
well, related to that question then is for churches that are in their, as we're talking about life cycle, are in their midlife, and they look around and they see that things have changed, what encouragement would you offer to them?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. And that's what keeps me up at night. Churches that are in midlife. And I think part of it is that, we get comfortable, ministry's good, attendance is good, we pay our bills, and DS isn't calling us and checking on us. So I think we start to coast. And I think the term that we use, the in-house term, is this church has plateaued, and what can we do to kind of get them on a different path? And I think this is where the gifts of the courageous leadership is needed most, to being creative without even knowing the landscape. I mean, who knew we were going to be in a pandemic for 18 months? Well, courageous leaders said, well, I didn't know that was coming, but we still have to be the church, right? And we still have to have a landscape in which people are connected to the one who loves them the most, Jesus Christ, right? And so history reminds us that everything comes back to this life cycle. So a courageous leader is always leading and moving toward the unseen and the uncertain. So I think your question was what tips, what practices. I don't know that I have one, but it's just that you have to be a courageous leader. You have to know who's in your community, what are the assets that are there, who can you partner with. It might just be the fire station. We have one church, the fire station, you look out their window and they were to their left. I'm like, do you do anything with the fire station? No. We all know firefighters like to cook chili, right? I mean, what a great partnership, right? They like to cook. They like to cook chili. What a way to change the landscape. People were, hunkered down during the pandemic, and the fire station could have opened up their doors to drive-by chili and crackers, and with a partnership with that church, easily feed people with a new view, right? And so courageous leaders are always moving, even if they can't see the landscape and even if it's a lot of uncertainty. You leverage the partners that you have in your community to get stuff done. I told a church yesterday, we did their building assessment and they've got a lot of work they need to do, but they also have two strategic partners that use their space. Well, they want that roof fixed just like you do. So how do you leverage their gifts and their abilities to get what you need done? And I don't think it's unchristian like to share the expense, but I think you have to look at your resources that are right in front of you. And then another part is, Sarah and Tim, is that we say we're people of the resurrection, right? And I remember someone who said this to me, and I won't name Nate. His name is Tim Bias. He said, we say we're people of the resurrection, then we need to act like it. And we need to act like we believe it. Now, that wasn't verbatim, but that's how I understood it. And so my biggest advice is we're people of the resurrection, act like it.
I hope that as people are listening to this episode, they're hitting pause and doing a gut and a heart and a spirit check on where they are at in the midst of their leadership with the local church and what are some of the courageous steps and questions that they just need to begin asking of the people that are around them in leadership, because you are pouring out nuggets after nuggets of gold that will help people move from that unstuck place to a place where they are experiencing the resurrection. Listening to you, the image that's coming to mind when I think about the movement from Jesus on the cross on Good Friday to that Easter resurrection is we're stuck on Saturday looking around going, what's happening?
Yes.
And you are asking the questions and pointing people in the direction that moves them from Saturday into Sunday. So thank you for that. And thank you for the wisdom that you have poured out today for folks. Let's go to the other end of the life cycle. The end of the life cycle. What challenges and opportunities exist for churches at the end of their life cycle?
I think one of the challenges is that we keep thinking that the way we did ministry in our heyday can be applied to today. That's a challenge, and it's just not going to work.
You've heard the podcast before, so you've probably heard me do this. Can you say that again? Not because we didn't hear
Sure.
you, but because our listeners need to hear it again.
Happy to. We have to stop thinking that the way we did ministry in our heyday, when ministry was good and people were coming and giving, as your heyday, but that's where you plateau, right? We got to stop thinking that we can apply those same principles, the same ministries can be applied today. People don't know what you do in that building. They know you give out food or you have a spaghetti supper, but they don't know what happens on Sunday. And so you have to take that Saturday image of Jesus to that Sunday image and remember that if Jesus got up from the dead, we can get up too. Another challenge and another thing that I hear people say is, if you build it, they will come. Well, that probably worked. And why we have some of these huge buildings is people like new and shiny, but that doesn't work. My millennial children, they serve God through their hands, through their gifts, through their passion, right? They sat in church with their mama and dad. Now they want to be church. They want their hands dirty. And so you want to pound the pavement of the streets of your community, call my sons. They'll be right there bringing their gifts and their conversation. So if you build it, they will come. No, they won't. We're fixated on ministry to people and not with people. We all of us on this call have advanced degrees, right? We middle class values, right? And so we think we know what folks in our community need. And you've probably heard this story before about a teacher went into a home and saw that the family didn't have a refrigerator. So she went back and collected money from all her colleagues to get a refrigerator delivered to this family. And then when she went back to do another home visit, the refrigerator was gone. She's like, "What happened to the refrigerator we sent you?" They said, "We took the money that we sold it, took the money and paid our electric bill." So we think we know what people want, and we have to listen to their hopes, their dreams, and their aspirations, and we will be surprised what people are hoping for and dreaming for. And another challenge is that we believe that we are engaged in ministry through transaction and not transformation. We think if we've given you a meal, that should be good enough. But when the real servant, Jesus Christ, is the one who can transform our lives, that's where we really need to help churches make that connection. It's not in the meal, but the one who provides the meal for us. So opportunities is that, and I think I said it earlier, that your church, your faith community are strategically placed for missional effectiveness. You may not believe it, but God knew what God was doing when that church was planted there in the hearts and the minds of those who gave of themselves so that there would be a faith presence in that little neck of the woods. And God will honor that. God will honor it. But you're going to have to step out of your comfort zone. And I said this earlier too. We have to go where the people are. They're not coming to those buildings. They're not going to do it. But if you go to them where the people are, they'll be there. And find community in the places where you gather. I remember some years ago, I took a pottery class with our youngest son. And long story short, I was the resident pastor when they figured out who I was and what I get paid to do. And so people began to share some things that were just really deep. And pottery became a place of creative escape from some of the things. And so go where the people are and take your gifts with you into those places. Or if you enjoy exercise, then that exercise facility is your faith community, is sacred and holy ground, right? And so, yeah. And the gift is that the three of us and others with the resources that we have, we can help you. It's not a surprise to God. It may have surprised us, but it didn't surprise God. And so we will come alongside of you. That's my thing, helping you dream. I remember one lady, she's like, "Well, we used to make prayer shawls, but nobody's sick anymore." And I said, "Well, there are a lot of people in the hospital that are sick, and those prayer shawls would be a gift to them." And I remember going back to that same church, met at the door with this photo album of prayer shawls that have been given out to their local hospital. And one of the things that always makes me tear up, they said, "Yeah, we partnered with Pregnancy Distress Center." She said, "We made a prayer shawl for the new baby. a prayer shawl for the mother receiving the baby, and a prayer shawl for the mother that gave the baby up. Well, that's their missional identity, right? And every time I go back to that church, she's got more pictures of prayer shawls of people that they have given, people returning citizens get prayer shawl. What an incredible ministry, right?
Those are resurrection stories.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with us about the big idea of understanding history and context in leadership?
The landscape sometimes changes on us, because that doesn't mean that you can't change and adapt with it. And that something that Bishop Palmer always says is that you have everything you need to make that next faithful step. Look at the resources that you have in your midst. Contact your district staff who have resources and gifts. And let's do this thing. Let's do this thing for the kingdom. Let's do this thing so that folks will fall in love with the one who loves them the most and the best. And the one who died on that Good Friday, stayed in that tomb on Saturday. But early Sunday morning, we call it Resurrection Sunday. Jesus got up. And Jesus got up, you can get up too.
You just heard a sermon.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to do the invitation now.
The doors of the church are open.
That's it. Those are the words. Karen, often on the podcast, and I say this because it's true for me, and that is, I'm a better person today because of this conversation. I'm grateful that you said yes and that you'd be a part of it. You said some things I know that we have said over and over on now. This is episode 199. So we have said it 199 different ways. And you have said it again. Relationships are what are important. Getting out of the church building and into the community. One of the things you said was leveraging the partnerships in the community. But another thing you said was just love the people in the community, know who they are. And not because you were quoting somebody I like, but your quote of we're resurrection people and we ought to live that way is the idea that maybe where we start as we develop relationships and as we get into the community is that we actually trust this God who loves us and that we can be raised to new life. Because as the landscape changes, you talked about adaptive leadership as well. Adapting that, not even knowing whether you could see the horizon or not, but you take the next step. Let's write a book. See if Sarah will help us, and we'll just write a book. And because that is the roadmap, if there is a map for this time. It may change somewhere in the future, but we would, as we're talking about on this podcast, we would leave a legacy for those coming behind us with that book.
Yeah.
So very grateful for the wisdom and the faith and the love you've shared with us today. Thank you.
Welcome. It's been an honor and a privilege.
Couldn't say it any better. And now I feel really silly for saying this, but there's another part that we still need to record because these are silly.
Oh, yes.
These are the rapid fire questions. So for our listeners, these are fun, quick questions really designed to help you all get to know Karen as a person a little bit more. Okay. Karen, what food is always in your refrigerator?
Chicken.
Who's one person you'd want with you on a deserted island?
Other than Jesus, of course, right?
He's going to be there anyway. You can't choose him.
He's going to be there anyway. I know this is probably just common too, but probably my hubby, because he'll keep me from jumping off the ledge with his humor. And like, yeah, it's not that serious. Yeah.
What is the last thing that you said to a loved one?
Mm. I love you. Be safe. Wash your hands and keep 6 feet apart.
That is great wisdom for this time.
What's one habit you've picked up during the pandemic?
Eating. One habit, probably, yeah, eating.
Have you found any new recipes, good food, or
Yeah. I've had some fails and some successes, but working with squash has been a fun thing to do.
and this is the season.
Yes. Yes.
What is your favorite all-time book? Or if that's too hard of a question, what book are you reading right now?
Favorite all-time book are Judy Blume books.
Love those books.
Right? Judy Blume books went with me everywhere I went. Yeah.
Tim, you never read Judy Blume, did you?
I
No.
did not. I have no idea what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
living vicariously.
there are other great books, but that's what came to mind first. Judy Blume.
What's one of your hobbies or a little known skill that you have?
Yeah, I'm still trying to work that out. I do make these cute little necklaces and make quite a few during the pandemic because I'm allergic to metal around my neck. And so these become cute little things I can make and give away.
Karen, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tim has already said it. I cannot thank you enough for giving your time and the wisdom that you have poured out. And as I have been known to say, if this was a written document, there would be underlines and bold and italics all over the place. So thank you. Thank you. You are a gift. And I hope that the people that are listening will take us up on the invitation that you've offered to reach out and let us know how we can come alongside you to take that next step, whatever phase of the life cycle you're in as a church.
Yeah. I mean, with your coaching and Dr. Bias's gifts, I mean, and I'll fill in wherever, we got this. We can do this.
And as Tim said, we could write a book.
We can.
I truly hope that that's one that you might listen to again, because there were so many nuggets of gold in this conversation. I would have to come up with 10 questions for the write it down, talk it out, and that's not what you're going to get. Instead, here are your 3 questions for write it down, talk it out. Question 1. What phase of life is your local congregation in? Are you just getting started? Are you in middle life? Are you at the end of the life cycle? And then think about what Karen offered for each one of those stages in your church's life cycle. And remember what she also said, not everybody likes that terminology, and that's okay. Question number 2, what is the congregation's unique identifier? And think about that in terms of what sets the congregation that you are a part of apart from any other congregation. What gift does the congregation have to share with the community that you are a part of? And question 3, consider Karen's distinction between transactions and transformation in ministry. And ask yourself honestly, where are we focusing? Are we focusing more on the transactions or more on the transformation? Our hope, of course, is that you're focusing on the transformation. As we've said several times, if we can be helpful, please reach out. That's why we're here. Once again, you can find the show notes for this episode, including the Write It Down, Talk It Out questions at transformingmission.org/podcast, or to go directly to this episode, transformingmission.org/199. And remember, who you are is how you lead. Bye for now.